For as long as Emma could remember, she had struggled with an overwhelming sense of exhaustion. It wasn't just physical tiredness. It was as if her body and mind had been weighed down by something invisible. This persistent fatigue had lasted more than 10 years, and it consumed every aspect of her life. Her friends, her family, and even her husband, Jason, all believed that she was simply lazy. They would often express their frustration with her, calling her weak, telling her she needed to snap out of it, or accusing her of using her condition as an excuse. "You're just being lazy, Emma," her husband Jason would say, rolling his eyes as he prepared dinner one evening. "You've been like this for years. It's time to get your act together." Emma winced at his words. Every day felt like a battle, yet no one seemed to understand. It wasn't that she didn't want to be productive. It was that her body refused to cooperate. She would wake up feeling drained, no matter how many hours she had slept, and any attempt to do something active left her feeling like she was walking through a fog. Her parents were no different. They urged her to go for a walk, to be more active, to do something that might make her feel better. "Have you considered trying something new? Maybe a hobby?" her mother asked during one of their phone calls. "I've tried everything, Mom," Emma would reply, feeling defeated. "It doesn't matter what I do. I just feel exhausted." As time went on, Emma started to believe the accusations. She began to think that maybe there was something wrong with her, that maybe she was just a failure. It didn't help that Jason seemed increasingly irritated with her. Their once loving relationship had slowly started to crumble under the weight of her condition. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling argument with Jason, Emma collapsed onto the couch in tears. She was done. She had tried everything to feel better, but nothing seemed to work. She knew deep down that this wasn't just laziness. Something was wrong, something she couldn't quite pinpoint. The idea of seeing a doctor had crossed her mind many times, but she had always dismissed it, thinking it was just stress or depression. But what if there was more to it? After a few weeks of soul-searching, Emma decided to take control of her life. She would finally see a doctor no matter what. It wasn't an easy decision, but it felt like the only choice left. The next day, she scheduled an appointment with Dr. Harris, a well-respected physician in the city. She had heard good things about him from a few friends, and she hoped he might be able to help. Emma couldn't shake the feeling that this might be her last chance to figure out what was happening to her. She had to know. When the appointment day arrived, Emma felt a mix of hope and anxiety. Would the doctor believe her? Or would he just tell her to snap out of it like everyone else? She didn't know what to expect, but she was determined to find answers. "Hopefully, this will lead me somewhere," she muttered to herself as she walked into the doctor's office. "I can't keep living like this." She sat down in the waiting room, nervously flipping through a magazine, praying for an answer. The door to the doctor's office opened, and Emma was called in. Dr. Harris, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a calm demeanor, greeted her with a reassuring smile. "Good afternoon, Emma. How are you feeling today?" he asked, guiding her to a chair across from his desk. Emma hesitated for a moment before answering. "Honestly, I feel exhausted all the time. I don't know what's wrong, but it's like I'm constantly drained. I've been dealing with this for over 10 years, and no one seems to understand. My husband, my parents, they all think I'm just lazy, but I know it's more than that." Dr. Harris nodded sympathetically, his pen poised over his notepad. "I can see that this has been affecting you deeply. I hear this a lot from patients, Emma, and I want you to know that you're not alone in feeling this way. We're going to get to the bottom of this." Emma sighed in relief, finally hearing words of understanding. "Thank you, doctor. I just don't know what's wrong. I've tried everything, exercise, diet, even therapy, but nothing seems to help. I feel like I'm losing control of my own life." Dr. Harris jotted a few notes down before looking back at her. "It sounds like we need to do a thorough examination to rule out anything physical. Sometimes underlying conditions can cause chronic fatigue that people don't even realize. We'll start with some blood tests and a full physical exam, and we'll go from there." Emma nodded, feeling a small spark of hope. It wasn't much, but it was a start. For the first time in years, she felt like someone was taking her condition seriously. Over the next week, Emma underwent a series of tests. Blood samples were taken, and she was asked to monitor her sleep patterns and diet. She followed every instruction the doctor gave her, hoping for any clue that might explain why she had been living in this fog for so long. Home, Jason was skeptical as always. He had never believed in Emma's struggles. "I don't know why you're wasting your time on this," he said one evening. His arms crossed as he leaned against the kitchen counter. "You're probably just stressing yourself out too much. Why don't you try being more active instead of going to the doctor?" Emma looked at him, hurt by his dismissiveness. "Jason, I'm doing this for myself, okay? I need to find out what's going on. I can't keep going like this." Jason sighed, but Emma could see that he wasn't fully supportive. It wasn't easy to convince him, and she didn't expect him to understand. She had learned to live with his indifference. What mattered now was that she was taking action. She wasn't going to let anyone belittle her any longer. A week later, Emma received a call from Dr. Harris's office. Her heart raced as she answered the phone. "Hello, Emma. This is Dr. Harris. I've reviewed your test results, and I'd like to meet with you in person to discuss them. Could you come in tomorrow?" Emma's stomach churned. She had no idea what to expect, but she knew that something important was coming. She agreed to the appointment and spent the rest of the evening pacing, anxiously awaiting the moment when she would finally learn the truth. As she lay in bed that night, her mind raced. Could the doctor have found something serious? Or was it all in her head? The uncertainty was overwhelming, but she couldn't back down now. She had come this far. "I just need to know," she whispered to herself, trying to quiet her racing thoughts. "Please let there be an answer." The next morning, Emma walked into Dr. Harris's office with a sense of dread settling in her stomach. She had no idea what to expect, but her gut told her that today would change everything. "Good to see you again, Emma," Dr. Harris said, greeting her as she entered. He motioned for her to sit across from him. "I've gone over your test results, and I think we need to discuss them." Emma sat down, her heart pounding in her chest. "What did you find, doctor? Is it serious?" Dr. Harris took a deep breath before speaking. "I'm afraid you've been poisoned, Emma." Emma stared at him, unable to process his words. "Poisoned?" She blinked, hoping she had misunderstood. "What do you mean, poisoned?" "It appears that someone has been introducing a toxic substance into your food or drinks for an extended period of time," he explained, his voice calm but firm. "The substance is causing the extreme fatigue and other symptoms you've been experiencing. It's something that builds up over time, so the effects didn't hit you all at once." Emma's head was spinning. But who would do that to me? "Why? I don't have all the details yet, but we'll need to do further testing to determine exactly what poison was used. The next step is to identify the substance, and from there, we can trace how it might have been administered," Dr. Harris replied. Emma's mind raced as she tried to comprehend the gravity of the situation. She couldn't believe it. Poisoned? Who could want to hurt her? And why would someone go to such lengths to make her feel this way? The questions swirled in her mind, but one thing was clear. This was far from the laziness everyone had accused her of. "Doctor, can I die from this?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. "We'll need to act quickly, but I believe that with treatment you can recover fully. The longer this has been going on, the harder it will be to remove the toxins from your system, but we have the means to help you." Emma let out a shaky breath, a mix of relief and horror flooding over her. She wasn't imagining her struggles after all. But now the burning question was, who could have done this to her? She couldn't think of anyone who would want to harm her. It was like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. As she left Dr. Harris's office, her mind was filled with confusion and disbelief. Who would want to poison her? Could it have been someone close to her? She didn't want to think the worst, but she couldn't help but feel betrayed. Was it Jason, her husband, who had always been skeptical about her condition? Could he have been hiding something from her all this time? That evening, as she sat in her living room staring at the phone, her mind replayed every conversation she'd had over the years with Jason. Every time he had called her lazy, Every time he had dismissed her feelings. Could his harsh words have been a reflection of something darker? Just as she was about to call Dr. Harris for more clarification, Jason walked into the room, his usual careless demeanor in full force. "Hey, how did the doctor's appointment go?" he asked, tossing his keys onto the table. Emma's pulse quickened. She looked up at him, her eyes narrowing. "Jason, I need to ask you something. Something serious." Jason furrowed his brow. "What's going on?" "I just found out something." "Shocking," Emma began, her voice cold. "I've been poisoned, Jason. Someone's been putting something in my food and drinks for years, and I have no idea who." Jason's face turned pale, and for a split second, Emma saw something she had never seen before: fear. His eyes darted away as if he was trying to hide something. "Poisoned? That's crazy, Emma. You're probably just overreacting," Jason replied, his voice shaking slightly. Emma stood up, her heart racing. "Overreacting? How could I be overreacting when I've been sick for over a decade? You've been calling me lazy, and now I find out this. What the hell is going on, Jason?" He didn't say anything at first. He looked away, as if the words caught in his throat. Then, after what felt like an eternity, he mumbled, "I didn't want to tell you. Hey, I didn't think you'd believe me." "Tell me what?" Emma demanded, her voice rising. Jason finally met her gaze, his face a mixture of guilt and fear. "I didn't want you to know. But I was afraid you might find out. It was me. I've been putting something in your food." Emma felt the world tilt beneath her feet. The room spun as the words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. It was him, her husband, the person she had trusted the most. "You did this to me," she whispered, her voice breaking. Why would you hurt me like this?" Jason looked away, his eyes filled with tears. "I didn't mean to. I was angry, Emma. You never believed in me. You always thought you were the only one suffering, and I couldn't stand it anymore. I thought if I did this, you would understand what it feels like to be powerless." Emma's knees buckled beneath her, and she collapsed into a chair. The betrayal was too much to bear. The man she had spent her life with had been poisoning her, destroying her, all because he felt overlooked. For the first time in years, Emma's body felt heavy, not just from the poison, but from the weight of the truth. Emma couldn't speak. She stared at Jason, her mind racing. Every memory of their time together now felt tainted, poisoned in a way far deeper than just the substance that had been coursing through her veins for years. Her husband, the man she had loved and trusted, had been the one to bring her to this breaking point. Jason stood there, looking small and broken, his eyes filled with regret. "I never thought it would get this far," he whispered, his voice barely above a breath. "I'm sorry, Emma. I was wrong. I'm so sorry." The words fell from his lips like nothing more than empty echoes. Emma didn't want to hear them. She didn't want his apology. Not now. Not after everything. "How could you do this?" Emma finally found her voice, though it was shaky and distant. "How long has this been going on, Jason?" Jason hesitated, guilt written all over his face. "It's been years, Emma. Since about the time you first started feeling sick." Emma stood up slowly, her body trembling. She could barely hold herself together. The shock of what Jason had confessed, the devastation of the betrayal, was too much. "I can't believe this," she whispered, her hands shaking. "I've been slowly dying. And it was you, the person who was supposed to be my partner, my love." Jason reached out, but Emma took a step back, her heart heavy with anger and disbelief. "Don't touch me, Jason. I don't want anything from you right now." He let his hand drop to his side, the sadness deep in his eyes evident. He stood motionless as Emma grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "I need to get out of here," she said, her voice cracking as she walked out of the room, unable to stay in the same space as him any longer. She didn't know where she was going, but she couldn't stay there with him. Emma drove aimlessly for hours, trying to calm the storm that raged within her. She was devastated, yes, But something else was beginning to rise within her, something far stronger than the pain, a sense of resolve. No longer would she let anyone make her feel small. No longer would she tolerate being disrespected or belittled. Jason's betrayal had cracked open the door to a new reality for Emma, one where she was in control. After a while, she ended up at the park, a place she used to visit when she wanted to clear her mind. She walked slowly along the trail, breathing in the fresh air, trying to find some semblance of peace. But what she felt most of all was determination. The next day, Emma went back to Dr. Harris for more tests. She needed to know how much damage had been done, and more importantly, what her treatment options were. Dr. Harris reassured her that there was hope. The toxin isn't life-threatening, Emma. It will take time to clear it from your system, but we have the right treatment. Your body can recover fully. With his support, Emma started a treatment plan that would help rid her body of the poison. She followed each step carefully, determined to rebuild herself. But even as she focused on her health, she knew she had a long road ahead. She couldn't just recover physically. She had to heal emotionally too. And that meant confronting Jason and the reality of their broken relationship. A few days later, after some reflection, Emma returned home. Jason was there, sitting on the couch, looking as lost and hopeless as he had the night she found out the truth. "Emma," he said softly when he saw her, "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I've been awful to you, and I don't even know why I did it. I thought if I hurt you, you'd finally see me." Emma felt the weight of his words, but her heart had hardened. "You poisoned me, Jason. For years. I can't just forgive that." He nodded, tears welling in his eyes. "I don't expect you to. But please let me help you. Let me take care of you as you recover. I know I've failed you, but I want to make things right." Emma took a deep breath. She didn't know if she could ever trust him again, but she wasn't sure what the future would hold. She wasn't ready to make any decisions yet, but one thing was clear. She would not let this define her. "Jason, I don't know what the future holds for us. But right now I need to focus on me. I need to heal. And I don't know if that includes you or not. I need to figure that out." Jason nodded, accepting her decision. "I understand. I just want you to be happy, Emma. Whatever that means." And with that, Emma knew that her journey was only beginning. The road to healing would take time, but she was no longer alone in it. She had found her strength, and now she was going to fight for her own happiness, no matter what it took. As the days went on, Emma focused on her recovery, determined to regain her strength and take back control of her life. She found solace in small victories. Days when she felt less exhausted, when she could go for a walk without feeling like her body was betraying her. She wasn't going to let the poison, whether from the substance or from Jason's betrayal, define her any longer. She had already been through too much. Emma was stronger than that. And slowly, she began to believe that happiness was still possible for her. The future was uncertain, but she was no longer afraid. Weeks passed, and Emma's health began to improve. The constant fatigue that had once weighed her down was slowly lifting, and her energy was returning. But the physical recovery wasn't the only battle she was facing. The emotional wounds from Jason's betrayal were deep, and they weren't healing as quickly as her body was. She spent her days in quiet reflection, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. Her life had turned upside down, and now she had to find a new path forward. It wasn't easy. The love she once had for Jason had been shattered, and she found herself questioning everything. Her marriage, her choices, and even her own judgment. But in the midst of her doubts, Emma realized something important. She was free. No longer did she have to answer to anyone who made her feel worthless. No longer did she have to hide her pain or pretend to be something she wasn't. She could finally be herself. One evening, as she sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Jason. "Emma, I've been thinking a lot about what happened. I understand why you're hurt, and I respect your decision. But I need to ask, have you forgiven me yet? I know I don't deserve it, but I hope one day you'll find it in your heart to forgive me. I love you, Emma." Emma stared at the screen for a moment, her heart heavy. She had spent so much time thinking about forgiveness, about whether or not it was even possible. She had wanted to forgive Jason, but the wound he had caused was still too fresh. She didn't know if she could ever truly forgive him. She put the phone down and let out a deep breath. Her mind wandered back to the moment when she first found out the truth. She had felt so small, so betrayed. But now she realized she had become something stronger. She had taken control of her life. She didn't need to hold on to Jason's mistakes any longer. She could move forward whether or not he was in the picture. As the days passed, Emma started taking small steps to reclaim her life. She signed up for a fitness class, something she had always wanted to do but had never had the energy for. She started journaling, writing down her thoughts and feelings as a way to make sense of the chaos inside her mind. She also reached out to her friends, reconnecting with those she had neglected during her years of illness. One day, after a particularly tough workout, Emma received a call from Dr. Harris. "Emma, I've got the results from your final tests," he said. "The poison is almost completely gone from your system. You're recovering faster than we expected, and I think you'll be back to your normal self very soon." Emma felt a sense of relief wash over her. She had come so far, and now it seemed like her body was finally healing. But even more than that, she had learned something invaluable during this process. She had the power to heal herself, not just physically, but emotionally. She didn't need Jason or anyone else to define her worth. She was enough just as she was. A few weeks later, Emma made a decision. She knew that she couldn't continue living in the same house with Jason, not while the pain of his betrayal still lingered. They had tried to work through things, but the trust was broken beyond repair. It was time for her to move on. With a sense of clarity, she told Jason that she needed to leave. She wasn't sure where she would go yet, but she knew it was time for a new chapter. She packed her things, not with a sense of dread, but with a quiet excitement for what the future might hold. Jason tried to apologize once more, but Emma didn't feel the need to respond. She had already said everything she needed to say. As she closed the door behind her and walked out of the house, she felt a sense of freedom wash over her. She was finally taking control of her life again. Emma spent the next few months finding herself. She traveled, something she had always dreamed of but never had the opportunity to do. She explored new places, met new people, and most importantly, she learned to enjoy her own company. She realized that she didn't need a man to complete her. She was enough on her own. And for the first time in years, Emma felt truly happy. One evening, as she sat at a cafe by herself, enjoying a cup of coffee, Emma smiled to herself. She had come so far, physically, emotionally, and mentally. The road to recovery had been long, but she had made it. And now, as she looked ahead, she saw nothing but possibility. She wasn't sure what the future would bring, but she knew one thing for sure. It was hers to shape. And whatever came her way, she would face it with strength, grace, and the confidence that she was enough. For the first time in a long time, Emma felt truly alive. And that, she realized, was the greatest gift of all. The end of this chapter was only the beginning of the next. And this time Emma was ready. Months had passed since Emma had walked away from the life she once knew. She had thrown herself into her newfound independence, embracing the freedom she had longed for. Her body was stronger, her heart lighter, and her mind clearer. Each day was a step toward a future she had never imagined for herself, one where she was in control, no longer defined by the mistakes of the past. But even as she settled into this new chapter, a part of her still wondered if she would ever find love again. Would she ever trust someone enough to let them in? Could she ever open her heart after the betrayal she had endured? It was on one of her regular weekend getaways, a solo trip to the coast, that Emma encountered someone unexpected. She had been sitting at a small beachside cafe, sipping on iced tea and watching the waves crash along the shore when she noticed him. He was sitting alone at the table next to hers, looking out at the ocean with a quiet, contemplative expression. Something about him seemed familiar, but she couldn't place it at first. Then he turned to her, and their eyes met. For a moment, neither of them spoke. It was as though time had slowed down, and the rest of the world disappeared. The man's face was one she hadn't seen in years, but his eyes, the same warm, kind eyes, were unmistakable. "Emma?" he asked, his voice soft and uncertain, as though he couldn't believe it either. Her heart skipped a beat. "Tom," she replied, barely believing what she was seeing. It had been years since Emma had seen Tom. He was an old college friend, someone she had lost touch with after graduation. Back then they had been close, almost inseparable, but life had pulled them in different directions. She never expected to run into him here, of all places. He smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "I can't believe it's you." She returned his smile, feeling a sense of comfort wash over her. "I know, it's been a long time." They spent the next few hours talking, catching up on the years that had passed since they last saw each other. Tom had gone on to start his own business, and Emma shared the details of her tumultuous journey, the illness, the betrayal, and the healing that had followed. They reminisced about their college days, about the dreams they had once shared, and about how much had changed since then. "I'm really glad I ran into you, Emma," Tom said as the sun began to set. "I never forgot you, you know. I always wondered what happened to you." Emma looked at him, her heart stirring with a mix of emotions. She had always wondered about Tom too, and seeing him again brought back memories of a simpler, happier time in her life. He had been kind to her then, and seeing him now, after everything she had been through, felt like a sign. "I'm glad you found me too," she replied, her voice soft. "It feels like a lifetime ago." Tom leaned forward slightly, his expression serious. "You've been through so much, Emma. Can see that. But I'm proud of you, really. You're stronger than you know." Emma smiled, touched by his words. "Thank you. I don't feel strong all the time, but I'm getting there." They sat in comfortable silence for a few moments, watching the sky change colors as the sun dipped below the horizon. The world around them seemed to quiet down, and Emma felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. As they stood up to leave, Tom hesitated for a moment. "I know it's probably too soon, but I was wondering if you'd like to get together again sometime? Maybe we could catch up more, just the two of us." Emma looked at him, her heart beating a little faster. For the first time in months, she felt a flutter of excitement. She had spent so long focusing on herself, on rebuilding her life, that the thought of opening up to someone again seemed both daunting and exciting. But Tom felt different. He wasn't like Jason. He didn't have the baggage, the hurtful past. He was someone who had always treated her with kindness, someone who truly cared. "I'd like that," she said, her voice steady but warm. Tom smiled, his eyes lighting up. "Great. How about dinner tomorrow night?" Emma nodded. "Tomorrow sounds perfect." As she drove home that evening, her heart felt lighter than it had in a long time. She had no expectations, no pressure. She wasn't rushing into anything. But meeting Tom again had sparked something within her. A spark of hope, of possibility. Perhaps love wasn't as out of reach as she had once thought. Maybe, just maybe, she could allow herself to trust again. She knew that she wasn't ready to jump into a relationship right away, but the idea of getting to know Tom again, of seeing where it might lead, felt like a step towards something new and beautiful. As Emma lay in bed that night, she felt a sense of calm she hadn't experienced in months. The past was behind her. The present was hers to shape. And the future, well, it was full of possibilities. She was no longer afraid. The end of her past had led to a new beginning, and Emma was ready to embrace whatever came next. The days that followed Emma's reunion with Tom were filled with anticipation. They spent more time together, taking long walks, having dinner, and talking about their lives. Tom was easy to talk to, and Emma quickly realized how much she enjoyed his company. He was patient, understanding, and most importantly, he made her feel safe, something she hadn't felt in a long time. As they continued to reconnect, Emma began to notice something within herself, a willingness to open up, to trust again. She had built walls around her heart after Jason's betrayal, but Tom wasn't like Jason. He didn't try to rush anything or demand more than she was ready to give. With Tom, everything felt natural. He respected her space, her pace, and her choices. One evening, as they sat on a park bench, watching the sunset, Tom turned to her with a gentle smile. Emma, I know this might sound forward, but I just want you to know how much I appreciate you. I've been through a lot in my own life, but seeing how strong and resilient you've been, it's inspiring. I've really enjoyed getting to know you again, and I just wanted to say that I care about you." Emma's heart fluttered at his words. She had been so cautious, so focused on herself, that she hadn't fully realized how much she had started to care for him too. She had missed having someone in her life who understood her, someone who accepted her for who she was, flaws and all. "I care about you too, Tom," she said, her voice steady but warm. "I didn't expect to feel this way, but I'm glad we found each other again." Tom reached out and took her hand, and for the first time in a long while, Emma allowed herself to feel the comfort of human connection. She wasn't rushing into anything, but she was ready to take things one step at a time. This time, she wasn't afraid of getting hurt. She had learned to trust herself, to listen to her heart. Over the next few months, Emma and Tom's relationship grew stronger. They spent weekends traveling together, cooking meals at home, and simply enjoying each other's company. It was different from her past relationships, and in the best way possible. There was no pressure, no hidden agendas. Just two people getting to know each other, supporting each other, and finding joy in the little things. As Emma continued to heal, she also began to rebuild her career. She returned to her passion for writing, something she had put aside during her years of illness and emotional turmoil. Her creativity flowed freely again, and she found fulfillment in telling stories, in expressing herself through her words. Her confidence grew with each passing day, and soon she was working on a novel she had always dreamed of writing. One day, while having lunch with Tom at a quiet cafe, Emma received a call from her doctor. She had been back for a few follow-up appointments, and this was the final test results. Emma had been nervous, but she took a deep breath as she listened. "Emma, I've reviewed all your results," Dr. Harris said. "The poison is completely gone from your system. You're completely healthy now. You've made a full recovery." Emma's heart swelled with joy and relief. She had fought so hard to regain her health, and now she could finally say that she was free from the physical burden that had weighed her down for so long. She felt a sense of accomplishment, not just for overcoming the poison, but for all the strength she had found within herself over the past months. She hung up the phone and shared the news with Tom, her eyes shining. "I'm finally free," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "I've been through so much, and now I'm truly healthy again." Tom smiled warmly, his hand gently squeezing hers. "I'm so proud of you, Emma. You've come so far, and I know this is just the beginning for you. You deserve all the happiness in the world." With Tom by her side, Emma felt ready for whatever came next. She was no longer the woman she had once been, weak, uncertain, and trapped in a life that wasn't her own. She was strong, confident, and free. She had rediscovered her own worth, and now she was choosing a future filled with possibilities. As they walked back to the car that afternoon, Emma realized that she had found something truly special, something that had been missing from her life for so long. It wasn't just love. It was the freedom to be herself, to live her life on her own terms. The road ahead was still uncertain, but Emma knew one thing for sure. Whatever came her way, she would face it with courage and grace. She had already proven to herself that she was capable of overcoming anything. And with Tom by her side, she was ready to embrace the future, one step at a time. The end of her past had led to this beautiful new beginning. And Emma was finally living the life she had always dreamed of, a life full of love, health, and endless possibilities.